Thanks, Parth. Can you hear me okay? Whoa. Bios seem extra silly at a psychedelic conference. And since we've been busy, I haven't had time to make many slides, so it's mostly just cool animations like this and memes. You can't really show these at the American Psychiatric Association, but and besides that, I thought I would cover every single psychedelic in half an hour, but then at midnight last night I realized that wasn't possible. So we'll just talk about a couple, and we'll see where it goes. A little closer. Cool. Just a little public service announcement, though, about the psilocybin T-shirts. I have one on. If you haven't seen them yet, I can bust it open. But has anyone noticed a bit of an issue with the psilocybin shirt? If you haven't seen it, check it out. And memorize these chemical structures on the screen, because we accidentally put LSD where it says psilocybin. So I think they're collector's edition. Yeah, we and who did the swag? Busted. Anyway, who can keep track of those things anyway? Let's talk about psychedelic therapy in general. So patterns are laid down early in life, in the bosom of the family, that continue to influence us even when we don't know about it throughout our lives. And psychedelics can bring that to light, help us get unstuck. Okay, yeah, I need to stay right up to the mic here. And really honor what you need in life to thrive. So I like the analogy that you probably heard that psychedelics, well, your mind is like a Utah mountain covered in snow where lots of people have skied on it. All your thoughts, your actions travel down this hill. They make these grooves, these ruts, these indentations. They get deeper and deeper over time. So pretty soon, you just slip into those grooves. You follow the same path. You have the same reaction. You end up at the same few spots at the bottom of the mountain. It's like our mind. Psychedelics, though, are like a fresh, big, fallen powder. They provide this break from the ruts and give us a chance to start fresh, start anew, let the brain reset, and we can more consciously carve new paths and end up at the destination that we really want to get to. And so one thing to think about, anyone know where these song lyrics are from, by the way? Yeah. Called White Rabbit, I believe. One pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall. See, I told you the talk was all memes and borrowed lyrics. But I do want to take a moment and just think about what brought you here today. What is your intention for being here, dedicating some of your Saturday to join together as this new tribe in Utah? So let's just ponder that for a moment, sit with it. What energy moved you? What is alive in you that brings you here? Because for me, it's a line from this song sums it up. The ones that mother or your psychiatrist or family doc, the pills that we give don't work very well often. We have a problem in healthcare. Depression is an epidemic, one of the leading causes of disability. Oh yeah, I do have some of these distracting memes. So, say you're in a room of 400 people. Nearly 100 of them will develop a diagnosable mental health condition. And a large portion, depression. Only 50 of those will get adequate treatment. And then if you do get on antidepressants like SSRIs, they just don't work well enough. And that's really all we've had, plus therapy for years, since psychedelics were whisked away from the healthcare field and society, But now we have some new tools. It's a new era of interventional psychiatry where we can give in-office treatments like ketamine. And even though I understand the critique about Spravato not being that effective, and believe me, if we could give psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression in clinic right now, we would. And I believe that's coming, but it'll take a few years. But it is nice to see this new chapter in mental health treatment where we can use these rapid-acting antidepressants, where we can study psychedelic medicines for healing and for waking up and for bettering the well also. You've probably heard this quote as well, but I had to put something on the starry stock photo, and it's a good one. Psychedelics are to the study of the mind what the microscope is to biology and the telescope is to astronomy, by Dr. Stan Groff. He wrote this really cool new 2-volume book called The Way of the Psychonaut, and MAPS has a booth out there. I think it may even be out there. I haven't looked for it. It is. It's a good one. I'm not through both textbooks yet, but work my way through it. But I do believe there's something to his statement that psychedelic medicine is shedding light on a lot of these blind spots we've had for so long. And so just a little bit on how these things work. How do psychedelics change your mind? Starting with the little plants versus Prozac, sacred plants. SSRIs hit a serotonin receptor, but they do it in a different receptor than psychedelic medicine. And I'm oversimplifying here. But chronic use of an SSRI can be life-saving, and I prescribe them all the time. I don't want to downplay that. But they're not the best. They don't work for everyone, and in fact, for most people, they fall short in some way or another. And interestingly, the way they work tends to blunt our emotions, and feelings are important. I won't get into that, but we do want to befriend and embrace them. Whereas psychedelics, by hitting a different serotonin receptor in the way they do and create this flood of serotonin release, they lead to more of a processing of emotions, more of an emotional release. And when you combine that with the right set and setting and therapy, they can be pretty powerful tools for healing. So, this is using LSD as an example, again, oversimplifying. There's that 5-HT2AR receptor. You get this initial blast of serotonin leading to what we'd call psychomimetic effects, or the hallucinations, the brief psychotic type symptoms. But then longer term, there's more of a loosening of the mind and some other lasting changes like increased openness, cognitive flexibility, tuning in with our emotions. I'll play a little clip. This guy says it well. This is from a Gaia series on psilocybin.
A lot of software engineers, myself included, tend to be victims of constrained thinking, or we think very logically and analytically, like this is the way, you start seeing code everywhere and everything you look at. But the psychedelics just take all that and rip it up and tear it into pieces, and you're like, oh my God, I don't really know what I know anymore. And that can be really difficult and really, really amazing. And so with engineering, what it tends to do is I'll get stuck on a problem, maybe it's some engineering solution. I just can't think of anything. And I sit with it. And then I just suddenly I can almost see the problem I'm working on in 3 dimensions, you know what I mean? With my eyes closed or whatever. And just see it in a new way.
So that's the general idea. That may sound familiar to some of you. It's like that snow globe analogy that is sometimes used of psychedelics shaking things up inside, breaking the chains of the ego that bind us and giving us a window of neuroplasticity to put some new habits and patterns in place. So let's talk about some more of this science. I remember as a kid there were these ads, this is your brain on drugs, and it was a This is your brain. It's an egg, and then you crack it on the frying pan, and it's all cooked up, and that's your brain on drugs. It's just kind of funny to think about now. This is a study from Dr. Nutt and Carhart Harris, where they gave 20 people IV LSD. 75 micrograms may seem low if you geek out on these kind of things, but remember it's IV. And then they measured brain activity by MRI, MEG, and some technique they often do for this kind of study called arterial spin labeling. And Robin Carhart Harris said it was if the subjects were seen but with their eyes closed. This was an eyes closed study, seeing what's going on in the brain with closed eye visual effects. In other words, their visual systems were no longer being stimulated by the outside world, but rather by the intrinsic endogenous activity of their brains, their imagination, so to speak. And also, under the influence of LSD, many other areas of the brain, like those associated with hearing, attention, movement, interacted not only with visual areas, but also with one another. So what happens is we tone down this watchful, ego state, the default mode network, so new connections can fire, and we see that in these photos of the bottom row where everything's lit up. And I believe that's what is on our lanyard from our friends at Field Trip Health. Their logo has this really cool image that I believe is what's going on in the brain in an experience like this. Okay, this slide doesn't really have any purpose, but I just got a little carried away and found some fun ones. Anyone relate? Yeah, I mean, some of the Hopkins studies on psilocybin are very interesting in that regard, just correlating the dose of psilocybin and the difficult experiences that come along with those, but that are meaningful and useful. And I'll talk about that in the context of ayahuasca in a few minutes, and how if you have a mystical experience combined with an emotional breakthrough, then there tends to be more lasting changes in well-being. And so here's that family tree that Dr. Fadiman was looking for. Yeah, you didn't know THC was the monkey, I guess. And ketamine, I don't even know. But here's something else he made reference to last night, I think, or someone has in our gathering so far, is the relative safety profiles of every drug, including alcohol, which wins, and then comes heroin, crack cocaine, tobacco, and then down at the end, what do you know? There's mushrooms, Schedule 1. But I had one slide, I think it didn't make the cut, but it had someone holding up a burning sage stick, and it said, "Sage against the machine." Anyway, I thought it was a good one. So last month, I went out of the country to help at an ayahuasca retreat, and it was a really neat experience. And I'll talk a little bit about ayahuasca because it's fresh on my mind. And this is how you make it. It's not legal to do so, even though they even sell the plants down the road at an apothecary where you can buy these ingredients. Although I don't know anyone who takes the time to make it well, especially in this part of the world. But ayahuasca consists of 2 plants, Psychotria that has the DMT in it, but if you drink DMT, it really does nothing because of your monoamine oxidase. So you've got to inhibit that with another plant, the Banisteriopsis vine, containing that MAOI. And if the exception is if you do a ceremony of DMT another way where it's, say, inhaled, then it doesn't go through the gut, it doesn't get chewed up, and it also lasts only 20 minutes, where ayahuasca ceremonies are like 3 to 5 hours. This picture on the right pretty much sums up most people's ayahuasca. it's interesting. There were 3 ceremonies for this group we took through, and we brought a ton of therapy from the Western world. The shamans brought the medicine, and then we all worked together to crack things open, process some stuck emotions, feel all the feelings, shed those unshed tears, let it all out, and feel invigorated afterwards. It was really an amazing thing. I remember hearing these shamans and those who have gone through this say, the first night, your first ceremony, you're just making friends with the plant. And I think I have a slide. We'll see if it made it in here. One gal, her story stuck with me because she drank ayahuasca. It's in this open-air maloca in the jungle, river running under, waterfall, just wildlife, sounds everywhere, and it's dark. These are typically done at night, and you drink the medicine, chill on your mat or in your spot for, say, half an hour, and then the shaman starts chanting. And that's when the orchestra of people throwing up starts. I don't know why it happens like clockwork right when he starts chanting, but that's how it works. And then this gal, in her first night making friends with the plant, she said she first saw this vision of millions of bumblebees, tiny ones, I guess, going to every cell in her body and fixing things. And then this hummingbird comes up and is just buzzing there above her heart and sticks its beak into her heart and starts pumping it up, her deflated heart. And then it's getting bigger and bigger. It's getting pumped up, and she's like, oh no, this thing's going to explode. And it kind of did, but it went and spread through her whole body, this feeling of love. And then the next night was rough. I think half of the 25 people we took through this didn't think they'd make it out alive. We joked afterwards that everyone pretty much got left for dead. And I remember someone even said, ayahuasca, why do you have to be so dramatic? And the amazing thing was every single one of them got back on their mat 2 nights later for ceremony number 3. No one opted out, even though it could have been the most difficult thing of their lives, but difficult and meaningful. So, yeah, we'll skip over some of this because I'm going to run out of time very soon, but here's how it works. So how does the experience change how you behave on a daily basis? How do you bring it back into your life? It's one thing to feel an outpouring of love during a ceremony, any kind of ceremony, but does it change how open you are to give and receive love back home? This is what happens as well when you go to ayahuasca. Now I see the error of my ways. Two of my kids are in the back, and they probably joke about it, but when I got back from out of the country, I just told them I'm not buying any more plastic stuff. And I don't. It's just some things like, why would you buy something in a wrapper that looks like, I don't even know what it is, like a candy bar seems laughable. And it's just more natural to wake up with the rhythms of the day and tune in with the earth. I think that's something we all love about plant medicine and this type of work is that it makes us more conscious of our home, of each other. And this is a quote by Dennis McKenna after he came out of his first ayahuasca, where he had an experience of seeing a molecule's eye view of photosynthesis. And he said, I knew that I had been given an inestimable gift. If we can bring together the best of shamanism and the best of psychotherapy, I think we can offer a new paradigm for healing, he said. What we're really trying to do here is revolutionize psychiatry. And this is someone from the retreat where I was working at. During ceremony, you can't go anywhere. You can't hide from it. It was like one of the first times where I just sat in fear or sadness or sat in memories that I was trying to hide from. There are very few things that I know of that do that for you, where you can't just leave. And it's true. When you go into a ceremony, there's no turning back. And And it was difficult for so many, but meaningful, and everyone made it out of there alive, and even better for it. So this was just some lessons learned, some things I took out of that experience is and I think we can use it in day-to-day life. When you find yourself overthinking, overanalyzing, remember you're in an egoic state. Instead, drop into something in your body. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Lean into it. Pump it up. Embody it. Every emotional state has a felt bodily sense. And one mantra we kind of came up with out there was breathe, feel, and heal. So there's my timer. Just one announcement, because we don't have someone speaking from MAPS here today. Rick Doblin's speaking in Israel right now, I believe. And they had some exciting news, so I just wanted to point it out, is that the FDA this week agreed to expand access for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. This is exciting. So, and they've worked so hard to get to that point. There's the emergency mushroom mobile, just in case that's next. But the compassionate use or expanded access program from the FDA is really interesting. I've used it before to access, say, European meds, to give someone a medicine IV for severe intractable OCD, for example. But it's hard work. You fill out a ton of paperwork. You need to find a supplier of that medicine. This is what it looks like. On the left, you see clinical trials that MAPS has been doing with MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD and other things. And then you have the expanded access programs where you need a willing pharma company manufacturer to supply it, and that's what they've just announced. They'll have 10 sites throughout the country that are not a clinical trial, they're for compassionate use to give access to MDMA for severe PTSD. And so we'll skip over that, and one more quote, and then I'm done. Jung saw the task of the therapist or guide or each of us in helping to establish a dynamic interaction between the client's conscious ego and the self. And I'll skip ahead. The healing then comes from the collective unconscious and is guided by an inner intelligence whose immense wisdom surpasses the knowledge of any individual therapist or therapeutic school. This is the essence of what Jung called the individuation process. So the healing resides inside each of us. And one more for the road about ayahuasca. In case anyone relate to that? No. Well, that's all I've got, and I want to leave plenty of time for Dr. Parth.